Welcome back to part 2 of building a Les Paul Jr. style guitar. This time we're looking at building the neck, fitting truss rods and things like that. So please subscribe and God save the Queen. I mean it, man. Okay, confession time. I've been thinking about this for weeks. Ever since I said I was going to build a Les Paul Jr., I've been thinking about one thing and one thing only. People are going to want me to put a Gibson mortise and tenon type neck joint on this guitar. A tenon template works like that. And that is the joint. It then means that there's nothing visible here, it's all solid and wonderful. The trouble with it is, it's an incredible faff, and at the end of the day I fail to see what it actually achieves. You don't need to drive a truck over this. It only has to resist the force of the strings that we put on the guitar. And even if you were to play with 14s, it could never break it. You could stand on the joint that we're going to make. I just don't think it's necessary. You know, it disfigures the top of the guitar. You can't have a plain wooden top because this is visible. You have to put a scratch plate over the top of it, and half of it is buried underneath the pickup. It's a weird one, so I'm just going to use a standard Fender style pocket to fit it, put it at a 2.5 degree angle to take account for the neck break that we need to get the strings up onto the bridge in a nice straight line. Much more straightforward. I hope you can forgive me. And don't worry, we're not using that Strat neck. Making a neck sounds quite daunting if you haven't done it before. It isn't really, it's just a straight bit of wood with an angle on the end of it, so it isn't complicated. Getting the wood can be, because the wood can be expensive. Modern mahogany is difficult to source sometimes at the right sort of quality. And what I do is I buy old mahogany. And if you go onto eBay or other sort of sites like that and just type in reclaimed mahogany, you're almost certainly going to come up with a plethora of sources for reclaimed wood. The tremendous advantage of it is that it's already done all its stressing and its drying and its warping, and you're getting a piece of quite stable wood that's ready to cut, and it's a lot easier to work than the fresh stuff, I can assure you. So this, I'm sure, was probably once a tabletop. You've got to be a bit careful. Quite a few of these come made out of what were basically boards. So I can see here that that was a board up to there. Now that isn't wide enough for me, not when I take into account there's some holes in the edge, so that'll probably lose me, you know, an inch on the side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take about 10 centimeters off here, trying to avoid these holes on the edge, which no doubt go right into the wood. So I'm going to take 10 centimeter strip down there, and I'm going to cut that out on my bandsaw, and that will become the blank for my neck. We're ready to go. Keep these to hand just for, well, at least for the short term, because you might have a chip or a big dent or a hole that you need to make a plug for. So keep your offcuts until you definitely know you don't need them anymore. It's 10 centimeters wide, and I just need to get it flat and straight, and for that I use my number 5. So this is my Quang Sheng. It's probably my Long March plane. It's very expensive. I bought it when I started, and it is just amazing. Number 5, very long bass, much longer than number 4, which is only about that long. Keeps it very flat, which means my my leveling should be very easy. Famous last words. A bit tighter than that. Wow, that really is quite good. Shockingly so. Right, so there's a high bit out there. So let's sort that out. Okay. I mean, the theory is, if you've got a long flat plane, all you really need to do is to get it level and keep going up and down, and it will make it flat. And that certainly appears to be what's happening. One of the things I've noticed about this old wood, you can actually plane in both directions. There doesn't seem to be a bad grain direction. You can plane up, you can plane down it, and it doesn't fight you back, which is probably what you'd get with young wood. That may well do it, because that was a complete stroke. Yeah, that looks good. Yep, so we now have a good side. This is the good side. So what we need to do is to mark this and say this is the good side, and I'm just going to do a little wibbly line up and down it. So let's do the flat bits. You might be noticing that I'm actually going down there slightly at an angle. This is a well-known planing technique. Planing on a slight glide angle, or an angle, actually takes more wood off more quickly. It's to do with the blade angle. This works. There we go, that's it. That will do. Left-handed planing. Very useful for when your arms get tired. That will do. Now, I don't have access to my own personal rainforest where I can get a beautiful piece of mahogany that I can cut the angle and the heel out of. So I'm going to have to make a neck up out of bits. Basically, I'm going to have to chop the end off of this piece of wood at an angle, stick it to the back in what's called a scarf joint, and then on the heel I'll take a little bit of the excess wood off the end here, flop it over, stick it on to make the heel a little bit deeper, because I think I'm going to need it, particularly as I'm going to put an angle on that. So scarf joint, my little device. I think other people have made similar things. It's a jig, so let's jig with it. Looking very good, possibly one of the most successful ones yet. So let's have a look. Exciting. In principle, that is how we make an angled headstock out of a flat piece of wood. In order to complete this piece of woodwork alchemy, what I've now got to do is to stick these two pieces together in what might appear to be in a logical fashion. I take the angled bit and I stick it to the back of the other angled bit like that, so that it makes this sort of arrowhead type affair, and then we plane down this to make it perfectly flat. So, take that apart. Right, now I need to get that together in exactly the right place. I think that is it. Twisting, and off it comes. One of the things I've struggled with in the past is how to glue this joint together successfully. The trouble is, because of this angle and the fact that you've got to squish across the angled wood, it tends to squeeze and squidge out, and the joint actually slips apart under the pressure of trying to glue it. So what I have discovered is that if you drill some holes through the top on either side of where the headstock will be cut out, you can stop it from squidging, because the screws stop it from sliding. Yeah. Okay, so I'm happy with that. Obviously I'm not going to put them in right now. I'm going to put some glue on this, and then once the glue is in there, put the screws in and close it up tight and clamp it. Leave it overnight. Use my special spreader, finger. So let's get this in a vise so that we can work on it with both hands. So we need to clamp these as best we can. So let's use some of these wonderful can clamps, which are what violin makers and guitar makers have been using for a very, very long time. Clamping is such a big thing in guitar making. On the other side, there we go. And the can will go there. I'm off for a beer and a shower, or maybe a shower and a beer, or maybe a beer in the shower, I don't know. So, see you all soon. Well, it must have been a good 24 hours since this was clamped up, so I think it's about time to get these clamps off. This is one of the great pleasures of guitar making, taking the clamps off and seeing how it's turned out. Can also be a bit scary. Oh yeah. There we have it. Don't know if you can see it, but it certainly seems to have set, and it's certainly glued. I'm just going to take the screws out that were put in to sort of hold it all in place, stop it slipping, and then I'm just going to run a plane over it because I like to see how it is underneath all the glue. Just a good view. Yeah, that's come out really quite nicely. It's pretty invisible, that. It's very satisfying doing good scarf joint. Well, that's definitely a technique I should be using again. Okay, need to clean up the face of the headstock because we'll be putting a veneer on there, obviously. But we need to get that perfectly flat. Just want to make sure, because this has been jointed, I just need to get any ridges off of here. I'm going to use my block plane set to a very fine setting. Okay, so now we're happy with our scarf joint. We need to re-establish a centre line on this neck. I know this is around 10 centimetres wide or just under, so if you can actually by eye judge how far off the 10 is from the side and how far off to the side the start of the ruler is, then where the 5 is the middle, and then just do that up and down the neck. And it's a very fast way of establishing the centre line. Now we know, because of the wood that we used, that this piece of wood isn't deep enough to make a Gibson Les Paul type neck. So I need at least double the depth that I've got at the moment. And also there's a curl here. So where that curl begins, I'm going to mark it, which I've done. So these two marks are where the block needs to be on the back here. So I'm going to cut a piece off here, and then I'm going to stick it on the back and clamp it tonight. And that will be the neck sort of structurally complete. 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, that is where the body will be, on the 16th fret. That's the convention with Les Paul guitars. So I'm now happy. It's the old adage, measure twice, cut once. You screw this up, it's a big deal. So I'm happy, I'm ready to cut. Okay. I'm using my hands, I haven't got push sticks. Be careful. Get your hands well away from the blade. As long as you keep your offcuts, you can always patch things up. I don't think it's quite big enough for the headstock, unfortunately, but yeah, that's literally a centimetre too small. What a shame, that would have been just perfect. That's guitar making. You do this when you build acoustic guitar necks. Sometimes you have like a triple stack or even a quadruple stack of wood. Just look at the wood and see what looks nice, because you might be looking at this. You could have spent time just flipping around. Yeah, I think that looks the nicest. And once you've established which look you prefer, make a mark with a pencil, a couple of lines across that you can use as registration when you glue it. I've actually written a letter G on this to remind me which side to glue this. So let's get gluing. The usual rules apply. Don't put too much on, but put enough. I use my special spreader, finger, and get it nice and even. I don't think we need to apply this to both surfaces. They're both prepared. Sure, that's enough glue. Right, where's my marks? There's my marks. I need to get it that way round. And then position it, and then use maybe just one clamp to begin with, just to establish the right position. and don't clamp it too tight. Okay, let's try and do some nice symmetrical clamping. There we go. Just keep feeling the sides to make sure in the right place. One down the middle, I think. So now we leave that for several hours, preferably overnight, to really go off rock hard. And then tomorrow we take the clamps off. This is a very similar process to acoustic guitar making. On an acoustic guitar heel, this would be 3 blocks deep, but we don't need that sort of depth. The best thing we can do now is grab our template and put it over the top and see if we're deep enough, which we are. And I'm quite looking forward to making that joint in the way that it actually should be made, rather than this strange overkill tenon. So there we are, just by employing a few basic lutherie techniques. The first one being the scarf joint, that angled joint for the headstock, and then just sticking a block on the end exactly as we would as if we were building the heel of an acoustic guitar. Just by employing those two really quite easy basic techniques, we've now got our neck blank. It's craftsmanship. I really hope you'll try and do it, because it's very rewarding, and it's what guitar making in its true sense is all about for me. Welcome back to Philosophy Corner, and this time I just want to say something very quickly about the complexity of guitar making. Sure, there are aspects of guitar making which are a bit tricky. There are bits of it which need practice and you need to develop a skill set. There are lots of people online that seem to want to make guitar making look like a black art. Sure, it is a little bit difficult, but I believe anybody can do this, and I think when you make a guitar you need to relax and adopt the simplistic approach to almost everything. Anyway, I'm trying to make it look easy because I believe it fundamentally is. Let's carry on with the build. So the next big job is to put the truss rod channel in here. So this is my jig. It's basically just 2 pieces of L-shaped aluminium or steel with some wooden blocks to get the spacing absolutely right. The router runs up and down the jig, and I've actually oiled that with a bit of graphite oil, and hopefully it will just keep it absolutely dead center on the neck, so I can just run up and down it and get it to the right depth and then take it off. And that is it. That is just perfect. So all I need to do now is to just make this end just a tiny bit bigger. And I do that with a chisel. That's it. Well, it took me about, maybe about 2 hours to make the jig to do this, but I have to say it was worth every second of it, because that jig will be my go-to method of doing all truss rods channeling from now on. I've seen people use boxes, I've seen people use the most bizarre overhead gimbals, I don't know, hanging baskets of Babylon, lots of different methods, but this method has just changed my life, so you witnessed it, so I'm happy as Larry. I've now got rid of my centerline on the neck because I've routed it out. So I want to re-establish a centerline on the headstock, so I get the headstock on absolutely straight and I cut it out symmetrically. So for that, guess what? I use a laser. The balance together just gives you a really nice perspective on the instrument. It gets you thinking about things. This neck joint, I just keep revisiting it. I think I've made a decision about it, but you never know, I might change my mind. Anyway, I think that's as far as I need to go this time. Hope to see you all soon. Lots more to do. Still pondering that neck joint, I really am. Anyway, that was part 2. Part 3 should be up in about a week or so. Thanks very much for watching. Please subscribe if you can, and I look forward to seeing you all soon. Keep building.